Okay, so we have a lot to talk about with reality television at this point. Um, so when I say every one of our special interests got hit at some point, for me, it was the Duggars and Teen Mom, and then for Shannon, it was Mormons, and I feel like there's one I'm forgetting with you too.
Um, I don't know. It's pretty much all of those two, though. I
Yeah,
care about. It's also just about like child exploitation, I suppose.
yeah, because all
Um,
three of them hit child exploitation.
yeah, just I guess the main thing is I don't know if you can call it a special interest, but domestic violence, just like how people talk about it, is also something that's happening, especially right now. But things have gotten so out of control that the people involved just don't understand what they were getting involved in, and now people are getting like severely hurt and they need to back off. But it's
Yeah.
gone too far. Like people just, it's gone way too far. People just don't, they're not taking it as seriously as they should be. I guess is like the thing that I really wanted to say is that this was like a predestined thing that was going to happen for every one of these shows and situations, but people are like acting like they're surprised that it ended up here because the people who made the show don't know anything.
Yeah.
They don't know anything about children, about trauma. They purposely would have to keep themselves pretty naive in order to even justify making these sort of shows, but they don't know anything because if they did they would have known that this could happen and they would have never made it and would have backed off, but they
Yeah.
obviously don't.
And we have three different cases here of how these reality shows came to be. I mean, so to preface this too, we grew up in the generation where reality television did become a big thing. Like both of us are old enough to remember when MTV had a show like Road
the real
Rules. No, Road Rules wasn't the first one. What was the one where they all lived in the house together?
the real world.
This is the true story. True story.
Of seven strangers picked to live in a loft
and have their lives taped.
To find out what happens.
What?
When people stop being polite. Could you get the phone?
And start getting real.
The real world.
Yeah, the Real World. And then they started doing ones where they took them on the road, and that was Road Rules.
You've been picked for the road trip you will never forget. Survive the adventures planned for you and you'll be rewarded handsomely. So empty your pockets and we'll take care of the rest. Throw out your rules. These are road rules.
MTV had a lot of the earliest dating shows, but they weren't an episodic journey. They were like one episode, and it'd be like Room Raiders, where the premise was they would have somebody who you want to date, and then that person gets to go through three girls' rooms and decide who he wants to date based off of their rooms. And so like it started off as this kind of like haha funny entertainment value type of thing, and even the Real World, where it was following these same people over and over again, there wasn't necessarily this incentive to do anything too extra from real life in the earliest seasons, other than the fact that I think reality television has almost always included unlimited alcohol budget for some reason.
I'm old enough to remember like when The Bachelor started.
Yeah.
And my sister liked watching it. I remember I watched it with her for the first like season, I think, because it was like this brand new concept that had never existed before, where like they announced and surprised everybody that when they started making The Bachelorette. And so that stuff happened when I think I was in high school when that stuff first reality TV became like a much bigger thing. I could never get into it. My sister loves it. She still does. And I could never, she kept trying to get me to watch all these different things that she would watch, and I could never watch them because I would just always think about how I would feel if somebody was like recording me all the time. And then it generally confused me that people acknowledge that there's like producers that are manipulating the like storyline of the show. And so I was like, so it's not real. So it's not reality TV. It's not actually real because they're forcing them to do things they usually wouldn't or they naturally wouldn't. And so why not just watch? I remember telling her, like, when I was like 19 or 20, like, why not just watch scripted TV then? Because that's basically what that is. It's just that they're like including people that are volunteering to do it so they don't have to pay them the way that they would for like a production crew or something. I don't know. It was just an odd concept for me that I couldn't understand why people would watch it, knowing and like talking constantly about how it's being manipulated by producers and stuff. Because I was like, then it's not real TV. So like, I don't understand why people like this thing.
Yeah, and I was a little bit younger to where I did fall for it. I did somewhat think that this was showcasing some version of reality, even though I started tuning into reality television with a lot less realistic ones. Like Flavor of Love 2 was the first one that I feel like actually held my attention for a long time. But like VH1 of love shows, for some reason, had me in a chokehold when I was in high school. I really did enjoy them. But when, like, looking back on it now as an adult, not a teenager, you can tell that people were almost rewarded for bad behavior on those shows. So the more combative you were, the more likely you were to stay. Yeah.
I will say that recently with the America's Next Top Model documentary and then the situation with Taylor Frankie Paul happening, a lot of people seem to almost be like waking up in a way to how exploitative reality TV is, where they suddenly have realized that like, I don't know if I can watch this anymore. I can't look at it as entertainment anymore because this is just really awful. Because if somehow people didn't hear about the America's Next Top Model documentary, like there were stories about Tyra Banks for a while. I like watching multi-level marketing content, and she tried to start an MLM. And so some anti-MLM people, like probably like 5 years ago, made videos about her, and I was like, oh, okay. And so there were stories like kind of floating around about her being exploitative in the way that the modeling industry also is, honestly. But it was really the story of, now I can't remember the girl's name.
Shandy.
Yeah, who was roofied when she was on the show, and that they,
or at least like very, very intoxicated.
Yeah, and that they made it look like she cheated on her partner when she was abused by somebody who did that to her, and then all these people for all these years still, like, she was never able to like correct that because that was just what the show said happened. And they made her like go along with that basically, and even if she hadn't wanted to, they just edit it to make it look like that's what happened. And after that sort of experience happens to you, you're more likely to, it's one of those horrible things which you're more likely to believe that it's your fault in some way than to believe, that it's not. And so it would have been a lot easier for her to not go against the entire show. But especially with Taylor Frankie Paul, that has happened, and I just have to go on like a rant about this because I am so done with how people talk about domestic violence. I need you all to shut up. Like, maybe that's mean. I don't think it's mean because of what you say about people that experience domestic violence. Every single time I see a video of somebody about her or anyone else who says that they're obviously the abuser and they're mean and out of control and horrible, I just think, like, this is why my mom suffered for my entire childhood, isn't it? This is why nobody believed her, and this is why, like, my dad's family still doesn't like her, because they think that she didn't do something good enough with him. Because otherwise, I don't know why they don't like her out of everybody in that situation. And so it's so frustrating to hear people the way that they talk about it. And like, as somebody who's one of my special interests is learning about cults, and Mormonism is very much a cult in the way that like Scientology is a cult. Like those two are actually pretty similar with the extreme ways that they, and also the Duggars I will talk about after this. But Mormon, like anyone who even just Googles something about Mormonism, or a big podcast YouTube channel in Mormonism that talks about all the problems in Mormonism is called Mormon Stories. It's hosted by John Dehlin. It's been on YouTube since like 2009 for like a really long time. He's been doing it. He did it even before like he could put his videos on YouTube. He's been doing it for a really long time. And if you just Googled just him and like just looked at some of like his most performing just like thumbnails, you would know that if you did a show about Mormon wives, that he would include domestic violence and abuse and stalking and grooming. And so there is no possible way that, I'm not even sure what network the show is on, but there's no possible way that the network that hosts the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives show did not know that. They knew that. They were just making money off of it. And that's why I think it's disgusting that reality TV exists like this at this point, and that people before this happened were like under the guise of this being entertainment. And I don't understand like that's how people can like separate those two things. Like I never watched this show because I was like, this is literally just a bunch of women being like traumatized by Mormonism and by the people that they have chosen to be in relationships with, basically. There's Whitney, who is the villain of season 1, is the only one that has a healthy relationship, but ironically her husband is the one that went through sexual abuse as a child while in the Mormon church. And like that was like their thing of him figuring that out. But there's that is very common in the Mormon church. It's not surprising that a 16-year-old girl got married to got together with a guy that was in his like late 20s, early 30s. That's a very common practice because it pushes things like that. And so even just the name of the show is called The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives because it was made when Taylor Frankie Paul came to TikTok and told everybody about how she was in a swinging group that was trying to blame her for the relationships falling apart. And instead of letting them just like whisper back and forth and make like vague posts on Instagram and stuff about it and blame her for it, she just came to the internet and was like, yeah, this is what happened. I'm not the only one that started having feelings. Everybody did. And they're trying to blame me for it, so I'm just going to come forward and tell everybody what actually happened. Like, that's what this show was based on. And the video that everybody saw, because I'm assuming Dakota sent it into TMZ, I'm assuming that's what happened. That's a pretty good assumption at this point. That happened when they were filming the first season. They started filming the first season and then they stopped filming it for like many months after this incident happened because they were deciding whether they should continue on with the show or not. And so I'm being very over-explaining to say that there is no way that this studio didn't know about this. They knew about this entire time. They were bringing Dakota and Taylor together to create situations like this happening. That's literally, like, the Johnny Depp trial melted people's brains. Like, there were so many people during that trial that I used to respect that I still don't, because they actually believed what him and his team were saying. And one of the many horrible things they said during that trial is that reactive abuse isn't real and that mutual abuse is something that exists. And it's like, no. Absolutely not. Mutual abuse can never exist. Never. And I used to try to argue with people back then and be like, when I was a kid and I would fight my dad, like I literally would like fight him sometimes when I was like 12 or so. and I would kick him and yell at him and scream and push him around and stuff. He definitely acted like a drama queen. Like, I was horrible and out of control and so dangerous for doing that to him. Was I doing mutual abuse towards him? No. Afterwards, this is not something that she has lied about. This is not something that she ever hid. The first thing I ever watched of her was when she was on the Nick Viall show, who is also a reprehensible human being, by the way. But she went on that show, and it's actually a really nice interview because she doesn't skate away from any of the details. Like, she says that one of her children was down there. She didn't know if she hit her or not, and she felt horrible when she realized that she was there and she saw that. And she says that she did it, that she took out her anger on Dakota and she shouldn't have, and things like that. Like, she was very honest about it all. She wasn't trying to make it sound like it was better than it was. She was as honest as possible. That show, they canceled The Bachelorette when they put that on TMZ. That was very obviously something that he did so that she wouldn't get success, which is also a very blatant abusive tactic. Like, on the show for this season, they discuss how he slept with her the night before she went on The Bachelorette just to fuck with her. Like, the interview clip I saw from the show, he's smiling with that evil sort of smile that abusive people do when they know that they've won in their little game because they're able to control the other person's emotions and mess with them right before they do something that is supposed to be a good thing for them. And so, she gets kicked off The Bachelorette. It was just announced today that he was cast on a reality show on YouTube that's being made by Alex Cooper, who hosts Her Daddy. And so it's wait a second. She gets kicked off a huge show like The Bachelorette, but he gets to keep going. It's sickening to me always. This is the thing that always gets to me. It's just sickening how easy it is for people to attack the wrong person. It's no matter how much information people have about trauma and abuse and domestic violence and all these things, they say they're more educated about it now, but none of that actually matters when things like this happen because they just do the same stuff. They just do it all over again. There's so many things about this situation that would make you question it. Thing number one, that he talked to TMZ. Do you know, you don't do that. If you're the actual victim in an abusive relationship and you are now thinking about having to come forward because things have gotten so out of control that you feel like you need to tell people about it, the last thing on planet Earth you're going to do is send a video like that to TMZ of all people. TMZ is a disgusting website. They're the bottom of the barrel. That's not the place you go to if you actually have any dignity or respect in any sort of way, ever. If you're the victim, you're never going to go to a place like TMZ. You're going to what other people do. You're going to go to the internet. You're going to make a video and you're going to talk about your experience and show things that you have as evidence that you could show to explain what's been going on that you haven't been telling people. It's gotten to the point that Taylor Frankie Paul was making posts about how this was really hard on her daughter because her daughter went to therapy and worked through this stuff and figured things out, and now it's being brought up again. She's having to see it again, and people are saying mean comments to her about her saying that, and do you think inside your brain? And the last thing with this show that I have to bring up is I thought it was also fascinating that people believe that some of the other cast members, when they said I'm not okay with this happening to children. You voluntarily signed up for a reality TV show that you also exposed your children to. If you decide to go on reality TV and you have children and those children are on that show, you don't care about abusing your children. Because being on reality TV is inherently abusing your children. So this entire TV show was created around Taylor Frankie Paul going through traumatic events in her life. That is what this entire show is based around, is a bunch of people hanging on to her while she does things that toe the line because she is not okay. And instead of people getting her help, they want to exploit that because it's entertaining. And so all these people on this show are using this woman. The network that is on is using this woman. This is an entire ecosystem based on using and exploiting a traumatized person instead of actually getting them the help that they need. And so, like, you need to just, like, stop talking. If you want to act like you now have ethics about what has been going on with her and her family, if you actually did have some, you would have said no. You wouldn't have gotten involved in this show. You wouldn't have made you're trying to make as much money off of her before she self-destructs her life. Like, you have no respect for her as a person. If that's what you're doing to her, instead of helping her, you should be helping her. And it's so disgusting to me that so many people are, like, acting like they feel betrayed by her, or acting like some of the other cast members saying whatever things about her have any standing at all. I'm like, these people are making money off of her being a mess. And they see her struggling and they don't care. I don't have any respect for you. And I just don't understand how people could know all of this about her and watch this and just not think about that the whole time this show has been on. Like, imagine going through a complex trauma like her family did to her, that we saw some of on the show. Her mom is a horrible human being. Imagine having her as a mom, and then when you're in, like, a very vulnerable state, suddenly being thrust into, like, celebrity because you are messy. And the show that you're on purposely puts you in situations to trigger you and make you more upset than you normally would be, because it's entertaining and people like watching that for some reason.
To jail for decades. The accusations are splitting his family. His sister Jill Duggar says, "We were shocked to learn of Joseph Duggar's arrest. We strongly condemn abuse."
To go with your special interest, the Duggars are like the opposite of that, but still just as bad to me, that people were basically watching it in an entertainment way because they were kind of like this weird family, like abusive family and a cult family.
Well,
I don't know.
Here's the difference with the Duggars is that, unlike, Taylor Frankie Paul, who, like, she's even come across my FYP like way before the Swinger Gate thing, because of her, like, vivacious personality, right? The Duggars decided to use their TLC show as kind of like personal PR, but also Jesus PR, right? Of, like, this is what a God-fearing family looks like, and we're this great Christian family, to the point where, to give you guys, like, an idea, back before it was common knowledge that the Duggars were huge pieces of shit, back when they just seemed like the homeschooling Christian family that does not care about modern society, it almost gave off, like, Amish vibes. Advertise Debbie and Michael Pearl's book on their website, which, if you guys don't know what that is, there is this very famous fundamental Christian book called To Train Up a Child that has resulted in literal child deaths, using some of the techniques from it, because this is a guy who fully believes in beating, starving, and, like, exposing your child to the elements.
Yeah, and I did want to mention that there's a community, I guess I'll call it, of severe trauma survivors that are childhood torture survivors. I'll put the information for somebody that has a weekly support group, if that's anyone that you would know. But the majority of people that are in that community are people that were part of the IBLP church.
James Dobson founded Focus on the Family, and you may recognize his name because the guy with the island was sending articles by James Dobson about forgiving your father, presumably to people that he was grooming, based on the conversations that were just released. Now, Bill Gothard founded the Institute for Basic Life Principles. You can learn all about that in the docuseries Shiny Happy People. But the important thing here is that Bill Gothard is good buddies with Michael and Debbie Pearl, and they wrote a child torture manual called To Train Up a Child. This is where I need some pattern recognition to come into play.
That was also where they got their homeschooling curriculum from, where you can look up, they called them wisdom booklets, and it is no sort of education. They're trying to be like, God counting the days of the week is our math lesson today kind of education. And so these kids are coming in extremely ignorant. To my knowledge, I think one of the few that's actually gotten their GED is Josh Duggar. But not all of them went to get actually like any sort of equivalency. Not too many of them anyway. And if they did, they went to some sort of Christian college where it probably wasn't held to a super high standard. So these kids, we watched them grow up in this very, very extreme Christian cult where they were very isolated. And it's one of those things, if you didn't realize they weren't just sweet little Christian people, you could see it right away. The fact that they only associate with people that are like them. The fact that when they go out into these secular places, it's like a running joke that the Duggars have a code word for don't look. There's an immodestly like dressed woman. The code word is Nike, like the brand Nike. And so you'll randomly hear them in the background of clips of them in like New York, and someone's going Nike, Nike. It's all been there, and it didn't really get brought into the surface until Josh Duggar started like basically forgetting the image that he was trying to live out.
How many of them were pro-life? An overwhelming 64% of voters in Tennessee stand for life.
Josh Duggar, the first scandal to happen with him was he got caught on Ashley Madison, which is a cheating website. It was a dating website specifically to find an affair partner. And if I remember correctly, he was one of the people paying the premium price for like a guaranteed affair. It also came out around this time, and it's always so hard to say whether people who come out of the woodwork in stories like this, if they actually did meet with them or not. But there was a porn star, Danica something. I don't remember what her last name was, but that came out and was like, yeah, I met up with him once, and the guy was very, very physically aggressive. It was one of those things that came out so closely that it was like, wait, what? This feels a little too convenient that this porn star now is saying I met with him. But in hindsight, it probably could be true. And let's see, after that, it was a few years later that his CSAM trial whole thing happened. And to give you an idea of how ignorant these fundy Christians could be, the FBI comes into his workplace because it's a workplace computer that was supposedly accessing these things. And Josh is like, oh no, was someone looking at CP? Like, unprompted. Just says that to the FBI agents. So yeah, he it turns out he had this computer set up, which somehow this homeschool freak figured out how to do this, where he had a partitioned computer, and it had two different operating systems on it. And so one operating system had like fundy programming on it called Covenant Eyes that was supposed to be where his wife Anna could make sure he wasn't looking at porn. And then the other side, completely unsupervised. And that's the side that, do not even look up what CP he was, because, there's a very famous CP video that was downloaded on this computer that, to my knowledge, I can't remember which country it was, but it was a foreign country where they don't have the death penalty, and they seriously considered putting the person who made this under the death penalty.
Oh, and one thing I have to say is, being a child sex abuse victim, CP, no.
It's not a thing. No.
Don't say that, because it may sound like semantics to people, but what it stands for is child pornography. It's not child pornography. It's videos and pictures of children being raped. Like real children. Real children. Not like, obviously no one's casting children in like a porn movie. And so it's real children that are being abused by somebody, and the abuser put it on the internet for other people to look at. And so that's why people started instead calling it CSAM, child sex abuse material, because that's what it is. I don't know why people got away with calling it something like child pornography for so long, when that implies that it's like that there's consent or something, when there obviously could never be. But when I don't know, when I think about the Duggar family, it feels like the Truman Show. More than the other situations that we're going to talk about, because they were making this show as like a propaganda tool for their cult. And that's always true. Like the Mormon girls aren't really doing that, because they, in a strange way, are showing all the problems in the Mormon church, with all of the different like dysfunctional situations that are varying in different levels with all of their relationships and life like experiences and things like that. But on this show, they're purposely making it to try to like recruit people to join them and think that how they live their life is a good idea. And so everything in reality TV is like fake to a certain extent, but they feel like the people that are mostly always performing, like always acting when they're on screen. And it just makes me feel really bad for all of these children, because there's no way that anyone has any idea how bad this stuff actually got, because they would hide the worst stuff, even the stuff that we know. But when it comes to like abuse, there's no limit in this sort of world. From the stories that I've heard from similar people that come from the same church. And so there is no limit to like the kind of things that they do to their children. But it's just, it feels like super fake.
Oh, with Josh, I skipped one of his things, and it was because it was uncovered around the time that, or a little bit before the CSAM incident, which is the family was going to appear on Oprah at some point, and someone from the Oprah camp found out that Josh had assaulted, I want to say it was 4 of his sisters and then like a babysitter or something. But there was at least 5 victims from my memory. And that became a huge thing, because then they had to basically, like, people wanted them to answer for it. They wanted them to answer for, like, how did you let this happen when you guys play this big happy family kind of thing. And they got the softest interview possible with Megyn Kelly, which we later found out when Jill wrote her book, Josh was literally sitting in the room for.
Like, we chose to do, nobody asked us to do this. Jess and I were talking, we're like, oh my goodness, most of the stuff out there is lies. It's not truth. And so for truth's sake, we want to come out and set the record straight.
Josh was like right there off camera, sitting in the room, while 2 of his sisters that were his victims had to act as spokespeople for him, and like, oh, he didn't really mean it, and it was while we were asleep, it was over the clothes, like.
But I do want to speak up in his defense against people who are calling him a child molester or a pedophile or a rapist, some people are saying. I'm like, that is so overboard and a lie, really. I mean, people will get mad at me for saying that, but I'm like, I can say this, you know, I was one of the victims, so I can speak out and I can say this and set the record straight here. Like in Josh's case, he was a young boy in puberty and a little too curious about girls, and that got him into some trouble, and he made some bad choices, but really the extent of it was mild inappropriate touching on fully clothed victims, most of it while girls were sleeping.
We didn't even know about it until he went and confessed it to my parents, and they shared it with us. No.
None of the victims were aware of what happened until Joshua confessed, and then
it wasn't like we were keeping a secret, afraid or something. It was we didn't know.
It was why we were asleep. That was supposed to be a good thing.
Their argument was because we don't remember it, because we were asleep, so it's like it didn't happen to us.
That's not how that works, though.
It's not. So yeah, they had to defend Josh, literally with Josh in the room. And so that all came up when Josh was on trial for the CSAM. He eventually did get convicted. He has been in jail since. And I think he's even gotten his sentence got increased at some point because he was caught with a cell phone he wasn't supposed to have. But where this all kind of is leading us to is what happened recently is one of they call them the lost Duggars because they didn't get as much visibility in the family. All of the older kids got married on screen. The younger kids, some of them were born on screen, but the middle Duggar group, they kind of don't get as much. And a lot of times, like if you go back and watch the talking head interviews that they did, there'll be like multiple kids at once. And I feel like Joe, who is the new person that has, I won't even say accused because he admitted to it.
Yeah.
But who has committed a crime against a child. He was one of the lost ones. He was one that didn't get a lot of visibility on the show in that way. And one thing that I don't think I've seen a lot of people even mention too is supposedly Josh was his buddy. Josh was his, like, the Duggars, they coined this buddy system, which is essentially, hey, parentified older child, this is the child you take care of. And so he does have that history with Josh. And what happened is on St. Patrick's Day this year, a girl who is still a minor was like 5 years ago. Joe Duggar touched me. It was over the clothes, but like it was very much a grooming situation where it was like, oh, come sit on my lap. And, you know, like did that a few times until he got her comfortable enough that he like put a blanket over them and touched her, like I said, over the clothes, but on private areas. And in his own words, my intentions were not pure. He confessed. So at the time when it happened, because it was 5 years ago, 2020, him and his family were vacationing somewhere in Florida.
We're in Panama City Beach, Florida. This is the first family vacation we've been on with Garrett with us. And so it's kind of a fun milestone to cross.
And at the time, he apologized to the victim herself. And then it didn't happen for the rest of the trip. 5 years later, when she tells the story to her dad, the dad decides he's going to confront Joe, calls him, and, like gets the police involved in all of this. And Joe admits to it. And he even admits to it when the police have him in custody. Through further interviews, they also arrested Joe's wife, Kendra. Like, the police, when stuff like this happens, they have to interview the victims, people in the family and stuff like that. It led to more charges. So, not a great sign. And the fact that his wife may have been complicit in it took a lot of people's by surprise, because early on when Joe first got his charges and we all knew that was happening, a lot of us were like wondering, is Kendra going to get away in a way that Anna didn't, who's Josh Duggar's wife? And then it was like, oh, nope, she is possibly involved with it. It's even worse.
Yeah, that's something I think is interesting about this, is that something with this being on reality TV makes people just like not see the reality, ironically, of the situations that these people are in. Because the women that are in this church that is essentially a cult, if they left, like if they turned against their husband, they would be cut off from literally everyone. Everyone. Yes. Their entire community, the place that they live, the only environment that they ever grown up in, everyone in their family, all of their friends, everything, they would have nothing because just like the bare bones of these sort of cult, sort of religious groups, they always look at the man as like the symbol or the voice of God in like human form. Like that's why the husband in these families always has to be the one in charge and make decisions and things like that, because that's what their religion is built around. And so I'm not trying to make excuses for the women in these families, like Anna, quote unquote, staying with Josh, whatever that means at this point, and or Kendra, like, horribly abusing her children too. But it is just a thing of like, if you think that this is going to like wake them up and get them to leave, that's kind of really naive to think that would be that simple, because like, I'm not saying that it's impossible to happen. It's definitely possible. Like, I have heard of even more like extreme in it, like Mormonism. There's the FLDS, which is the fundamentalist church that is like kept the rules of like the original Mormon church from like the 1800s. They're like more extreme in a lot of ways. Like people compare them to the Amish that are also extremely abusive. And so they're more similar to that, but like people who have left the FLDS or other cults that are a part of kind of the FLDS world, even though they have nothing, there are people that have done that. I'm going to try to find some of their YouTube channels and put them on here when I post this, because I've watched videos by them. And so there are people that have left IBLP churches. Like the severe trauma survivors that I have found on TikTok are people that grew up and then left when they were old enough to get out of there. That's why they're able to like tell these stories now, or otherwise nobody would know about any of these things. So it's not impossible, but it is one of those things like somehow people just still cannot grasp like what that would actually mean. It takes 7 times for somebody to leave an abusive relationship and not go back. And so, and so it's already difficult when you already don't have this idea in your head that if you do this, you're going to damn you and the rest of your family to be tortured in hell forever for the rest of humanity when you die. And so I want people to want them to leave, but I almost like want people to also even understand what you're almost expecting of these people, because I just see people get disappointed when they don't, but I don't think they fully get like how much they're up against. Ironically, like the Duggar family continuing to get caught for these things. In this weird way, I always feel bad for the kids, even the ones that have done horrible things, because this stuff is difficult and they wouldn't have to be known in this public way for the abuse that they did to children, and their victims wouldn't have to deal with the press and people knowing them or people trying to figure out who they are if they weren't forced to be on a reality TV show when they were literally children by their parents that did not care about them. And that's always the part with this show that is so hard for me, is that like none of these kids could ever have decided to do this. And now when they do horrible things because of the abuse that they grew up in, them and their victims are under way more scrutiny. Like nobody who's dealing with sexual abuse of children it's never a good idea. And not because you're trying to hide it, but it just puts so much more pressure on the victims especially, and I don't want them to feel that. Like it's honestly horrific to think about the sisters having to do that interview with Megyn Kelly, because the things that they said, their parents had to be saying that to them. And that's like, it makes me want to die to imagine them having to be coached by their parents and having their parents tell them things like, well, it's not that bad because you were asleep when it happened.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean that it was not that bad because you were asleep when it happened? that's even more terrifying because you're asleep. He couldn't stop you. Do you know how scary that is? I like don't let myself listen to scary things after 10 o'clock at night because I will start getting scared of somebody's secretly in my apartment again. And so it's like that's why I had insomnia for so many years, because I kept like being afraid that somebody was like hiding in my closet or something. And
Yeah.
I'm not even sure why I was afraid of that, but I know it obviously came from something of how things happen. And those girls are probably going through that. That's the thing that's always so hard for me when I hear these stories of why I could never watch like most of these shows, is because I just think about what those girls, I know exactly what they were dealing with, but they didn't have like an option. Like I have the option, much easier option, even as difficult as it was for me to go to like therapy and get help. But for them, it's like astronomically harder. Like they're taught propaganda that says that going to a therapist means that you're of the devil, and things like that. And so like it's already really, really difficult when you're a child sex abuse victim to ever go to a therapist and like admit that you need help and then realize that it's not your fault. That's already a gargantuan effort that we're all doing whenever we figure that out, because it just goes against so many things that people want to believe. But on top of that, like, it's just, I know that they must be having like nightmares like that all the time, and it just makes me really sad to think that they're still suffering like that. And that they'll probably always will be, unless they like run away. But if they do, then they won't be able to speak to anyone in their family again for the rest of their life.
Well, yeah, there's a few different things that this brings up for me. So, first of all, Counting the Cost, Jill's book, I cannot recommend it enough for anyone who is interested in this. But the exploitation by their dad becomes so clear when you find out from Jill. The perspective that she got out from is her husband's, which her husband right away was like, hey, we're trying to do all of these things, you know, like, and we have no money, but you're on a literal TV show. How do we have no money? And him like slowly uncovering, these kids have been like signing paperwork that lets their dad be custodians over their funds and stuff. They have been having taxes filed for them, and they're not getting any of this income. And I think like for him, he got denied like law school or something because of how that all happened. And then, you know, like these things continuing to happen, these secrets that get buried in the family. Well, they didn't stay secrets. And so now everybody knows the 5 victims' trauma with Josh, for example. And I know with Jill, that was a big one. Like when she talks about it in her book, she really feels like, because I think they were able to win a suit against Us Weekly, if I remember correctly. It's something like that. They sued somebody who leaked the Freedom of Information documents to the press and made it a big story, because she had no control over that narrative making it to the press. And then now every single time that something happens, people go back to that because it's an example of, hey, look, this family has always been shitty. And so, like, I mean, I know we're talking about it right now, so it's kind of hypocritical to say, but people, like, are essentially, they have to relive this trauma every time something new comes out about their family.
Yeah, and the way I think about it with us is that we're talking about it from the angle of, this is really messed up that this keeps happening to them.
Yes.
And we're not trying to exploit these people. I want people to stop watching these shows. Like, I'm like wanting to beg people to stop watching them, because if people do, then they'll stop making them. And these people won't have to suffer this way anymore. And it just, with all these back-to-back stories happening concurrently right now, and there's like one more that we're going to talk about, it just feels like there's so many examples happening right now of like, this is like the only place that these sort of reality TV shows could end. And they're all happening pretty much all at the same time right now, that it's like, can we not look away from this and not like downplay these things or lessen the severity of what's going on, because they're all very serious things that are going on right now. So many like kids and adults just, and especially with kids, because they don't have any control over anything that's going on, that are just in the middle of these huge situations, and it's not because they want to. The Duggar kids that have gotten away have done a really good job of telling things that they can without going too hard really against their family, because that would like sever any possibility of any sort of communication from any of them ever again. It's a very hard line to walk. And they've done a good job of trying to do that while also saying like why they can't do this stuff anymore. Because they have a lot of siblings, and you wouldn't want to like shut that door of any of their siblings being able to talk to them if they ever want to, you know, try to cut things off with their parents the same way that they had to. It's a very challenging situation for all of them to be in. And these sort of things would be happening, like regardless. I'm sure there are other families that have things like this going on in their community, but nobody else is having it be reported as like the news.
Wait, I have one more thing I want to say about the Duggars really quick, which going back to your point of like just the idea of these high control groups being like the subjects of reality TV. That it's always inherently going to be abusive, and this takes place even outside of the religious aspect, because I mean, so I've talked about Girls Next Door. That was a high control group. Like when you really think about it, Hugh Hefner had pretty strict rules on the girlfriends. You had to be back in by 9, and you had to go on all of the dates with him and dress up. And if you didn't go on the dates, you looked bad. And if you didn't come down for all of the nightly activities at the mansion, you looked bad. And then, of course, it gets even deeper when Holly and like some of the even back when he had like 7 girlfriends at once have done their books on what actually happened. We have his ex-wife now talking about how he has potentially Polaroids of minors that are just in a collection somewhere in the Playboy Mansion collections. So these high control groups that sneak under the surface and use reality TV as PR becomes especially sinister, because it's almost like the people that are in the high control groups that you would want to escape have, like, you would think it would give them more avenues for escape. A good example from the Duggar clan is Ginger Duggar. She's currently married to, I believe he was a soccer player for a while, Jeremy Volo. And a lot of people thought she was going to be the one to get out, because when they took those Duggar kids to New York to show them the big city, she was the one like, yeah, I want to live here someday, and I love this. To the point where there was like, back when websites were, you know, a little bit more where you got this kind of stuff, there was a free Ginger website. I think it might still exist. So people thought she was going to be the one to get away. When you're in this PR piece for a high visibility group, it's almost harder, because you're almost like, people want to push you out so fast to where you can't dip your toes into like secular life. The only reason Jill's the one that kind of has more than anybody else is because of her husband. It was because she just happened to get a husband. The reason he was chosen was because he was doing missionary work. Other than that, the guy was pretty secular.
Yeah.
And I mean, he has Christian beliefs, but yeah.
The thing I was going to say was, ironically, I think that Ginger, and most of the kids in the family, they look at like the secular world like we look at them watching them on reality TV. Like they're watching us and like, this is interesting, this is different, and this is entertaining. But like, just like people who are watching the Duggars wouldn't be like join the IBLP church and move to where they live, they're not thinking about, you know, leaving their family and joining our society in the same sort of way. And maybe that helps people like understand why more of them haven't like completely cut things off and left the way that some of them have, because that's how they would probably see us. Because how else could they see us?
Exactly. And it makes me sad for like Taylor fake you know who I'm talking about, Taylor from the Mormon Wives. It makes me sad for her, especially because when you think about The Bachelor and her having her own show, her like a show where she's the focal point, like, yes, it was still going to be messy. It's The Bachelor. It was still going to have just as much drama. But if anything was her ticket out of like the high control group, it was something like that. And so it screams reactive reviews even more to me, because that's what he decided to take away. That's when he decided to leak the video, was when she would have been in the best position to actually leave.
Yeah, whenever she starts being happy with another person or just happy overall, he always comes back and tries to get the audience to like him. Which ironically, before this happened, people hated him. And so it's like, that's part of why I was like shocked of how fast they flipped on her. Because they were just like, oh, what about her child? I was like, oh my God. Okay. That's not as easy as that. And so the last situation we're going to talk about is Teen Mom.
Nothing else worse can happen, Mom.
For anyone who somehow doesn't know, it started off as a show called 16 and Pregnant. And 16 and Pregnant, the whole thing was, we're going to shoot these documentary style videos, snippets of a teen girl's pregnancy. It was called 16 and Pregnant. Not all of them were literally 16, but they were all teenagers for sure. And so therein lies one of the problems already, is like, let's take this highly traumatic moment in a teenager's life. And the show 16 and Pregnant likes to toot its own horn and be like, we were part of the reason why teen pregnancy rates have gone down. I think they were trending down even before 16 and Pregnant came around. And I mean, with more and more information at people's fingertips, I feel like it just makes sense. But I can't say definitively whether or not it has actually helped teen pregnancy rates. That's what they claim. Now, after that was not enough for people, because they went on to do multiple seasons of 16 and Pregnant. People then wanted them to follow some of the more popular moms from the shows. And so that birthed Teen Mom. And there's been a few iterations of Teen Mom as well. There's two different casts that have since been merged. But, you know, there was a Teen Mom original, and they're now called the OG crew, and then Teen Mom 2, which I don't think all of them are still on it, and they've had to add other moms that weren't originally a part of the core group that they filmed. But, yeah, so we went from, let's film these teenagers' like most traumatic moment of their life, to let's film all of the traumatic things that follow. And especially with some of these girls who, let's be real, they were chosen because their trauma was extra. So, for example, Farrah Abraham, she was like one of the original Teen Mom girls. And her story started out with, on 16 and Pregnant, like, her parents very much hated her baby daddy, and he was not involved at all. She was this cheerleader who was hiding her pregnancy for as long as possible. And, it was very clear her relationship with her mom was not good. We'll just put it that way. There was a lot of yelling. And so when she got on Teen Mom, the big storyline reveal was that actually while she was pregnant, 3 months before she gave birth, her baby daddy died in a car accident. And so then we got to follow the trauma of her, like, realizing her parents kept them apart to the point where, like, we saw on the show her denying to him that it was his baby. So he didn't ever get to be a part of the pregnancy. And then, like, I think she did somewhat try to get Sophia acquainted with his family, but things fell out, and that didn't work. We saw all of the arguments with her mom thereafter. And yeah, Farrah's one of the hot mess ones that, like, she kind of pulled herself out of the franchise, but she's still someone that people follow because of Teen Mom. The other biggest hot mess that comes up in media a lot still is Janelle Evans.
Sorry. My name is Janelle Eason. I'm a 17. I'm a 17. And my husband, he just assaulted me. And he pinned me down on the ground in the blood.
I don't know anything about her family life because that has all not been on camera as much, but we do know her mom. We know she was raised by a single mom. And we know her mom because pretty quickly on her Teen Mom first season, she was wanting to go out and party and still be young. And she was essentially just like abandoning Jake with her, or not Jake, Jace with her mom, her son Jace. And Jace, at this point, you know, like infant months old, there is one argument to be had of like they sleep all the time anyway, right? But she would act like she was still doing all of the work, not really be thankful of her mom Barbara, and not even necessarily ask for permission while she was going out. She would just do it. She'd just go out and be like, "I'm leaving, bye." And then there you cue to like footage of Barbara rocking baby Jace in the dark. You know? Like so at some point in the very first season, Barbara was like, "This is enough. Like, if you're not going to take care of your kid," she filed for temporary custody or emergency custody. I don't know the difference enough. I think it was probably temporary because I don't think it was an emergency situation. But she basically, you know, filed saying, "I've been taking care of this kid. She's nowhere to be found. I feel like I deserve to have the custodial rights to this child." And that fight happened on camera. The fight of Janelle getting served the paperwork and being in her mom's face and screaming at her. Everything that happened on Teen Mom and with Janelle having any sort of spotlight thereafter has been her trying to prove that she is better than the circumstances she came out of, that she is a worthy mother and all of these things, but failing at it. And I mean, some of that can be chalked up to her own trauma, but a lot of it has been her codependency with very, very terrible men. And so to kind of skip ahead, her most recent ex, she's denying she's back with him, but she is currently back with her most recent ex-husband, David Eason. And David, when he first came on, he seemed clean cut. He seemed like maybe he could potentially be good for her. He wanted to be a family man and stuff, but the mask fell on screen too. And we started saying, this man has violent tendencies. This man is somewhat scary. And oh my gosh, is she in a bad situation? Like that became apparent on camera. There's video of Jace at, you know, like probably 8 years old saying, "My mom and David are pieces of shit" to his grandma Barbara.
Yeah.
All of that has been playing out, and Jace, meanwhile, has been this great white whale for Janelle of, "I'm gonna get custody back and I'm gonna be such a better mom than Barbara," and all of this stuff. She never actually earned custody back. She tried multiple times to like take it to court and officially get custody back when her mom would not give it to her. What finally set things in motion for Jace to be under her custody was Barbara just saying, "Look, I'm really old and this kid is not okay and I can't handle this anymore." And so she signed over rights to Jace. But pretty immediately after, the reports started coming out, Jace ran away. There was a 911 call. Jace ran away again. That happened, like 2 or 3 times, at least, in a few months of him getting back with her. And then it kind of really escalated to an incident where, so Jace says David strangled him. There's supposedly ring video footage of this. Janelle denies that it exists, that there's no ring video footage, that never happened, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I believe the kid, but it's still being tried, unfortunately. David, I think there's been a few continuances to my knowledge, and David has not been officially sentenced with anything just yet, but he caught child abuse charges for this one. And Jace has been off and on, like back with Barbara. At one point, his dad, who has not been involved since 16 and pregnant, he came back onto the scene and he tried with Jace for a while, but Jace wasn't happy there either. And now it's in a situation where there was an incident with Jace and Barbara. He was staying with Barbara. Janelle still officially has custody on paper. And supposedly Jace found out that Janelle is now seeing David again. They've been spotted again. There's pictures. Janelle's denying they're back together. But, you know, he found out the rumors and threatened to kill himself. And because he did that, Barbara, you know, once again, she's old. She's said she can't manage his care by herself. She had to call for help. And so she made a 911 call. Jace was then pretty quickly taken to a mental health care facility. Luckily, nothing bad happened with the police, even though, you know, there was talk that he may have had a firearm. Luckily, he was able to be talked to and taken out of there within 15 minutes. The police weren't even on the call that long. And in the mental health facility, Barbara tried to get emergency custody. That was denied, most likely because he's in a facility. You know, it's not a situation that he needs to be pulled out of immediately. But she is now fighting for temporary custody. Janelle, seeing that the press is not in her favor at this moment, pulled Jace from whatever facility he's been at. First said Barbara can't contact him there. Barbara kept leaving messages with the nurses and stuff. And the last thing that we know is that this weekend, Janelle photographed Jace on an airplane on her stories. And the rumor is she has now taken him to a new facility where Barbara and his dad, Andrew, have no idea where he's at. Yes, all of this, once again, stems from the fact that he was abused by her ex-husband, who she is now rumored to be back with. And, like, it's so easy to look at Jace and be like, there's clearly something wrong with this kid. He keeps running away. He's causing all of this trouble. But we saw all of the trauma. We literally saw every single huge moment of this kid's trauma since he was born. Even with Teen Mom taking occasional years-long breaks of filming. We have seen all of it for the past 16 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even the way that people phrase it, like, I don't mean you phrasing it this way, but just people in general, they say, like, oh, something's wrong with him. Do you mean that he's been horribly traumatized his whole life?
Yeah.
Is that the thing that's wrong with him? But, like, the way that people phrase it is that they put it on the child. Like, oh, there's something wrong with you. And it's like, you mean that my mother has never cared about me one single day in my entire life? Like, yeah, that's what's going on. And so they had to have known something when they made this show because they have a legal department. But the majority of children that end up pregnant, because 16-year-olds are children, are usually getting pregnant by people taking advantage of them somehow. But even beyond that, even if they are like both the same age or they're not in like an abusive dynamic or something, it's very obvious to me that abuse would happen. And it would be more likely to happen when you put them on TV and make them famous. Because abusive people like attention. They like money. They like using people to get attention and money so that they don't have to figure it out themselves. That's how abusive people act. They just use other people to get what they want and don't care what they put people through to get what they need. And so you're way more likely to have things like this happen. And Mandy's been telling me about this Teen Mom thing for probably like a year or two. And every time she tells me about it, I'm like, these people have no idea the situation that they've waded into. They don't know. There's no way that they could know because they've been out of their depth for years. And anyone who's knows anything about childhood trauma like this or been through things like this would know. But nobody listens to us. And so it's just, this is like the stuff that I just think about of like, I don't know why these shows are able to do this. And like nobody pops up and is like, this might not be a good idea to do this sort of thing because they only care if it looks bad on them as a network. But it's like, you're making money off of kids going through really traumatic things. And Janelle is definitely like the worst person you can possibly ever imagine at this point. And the things that she's putting Jace through, even like the way that I see people reporting on it they don't understand how serious this is. Like whenever we talk about this, I tell her like, I hope that Jace doesn't die. And like, do people understand? I don't think people understand that it's that serious. Like, he's a child. He's 16 years old. Strangulation is one of like the worst things ever. And it's a lot worse than I think people even can imagine it to be. And so to have that happen to you when you're living at like your mom's house, and especially the way that people realized it was somebody else seeing like bruises on him and like him then having to tell them, not because like somebody actually tried to help him or something like that. Like things like that could have been going on for a while, or even worse things could have been happening and that people don't know about. Thank God they don't know about that kind of stuff because way too much of this child's life is public. But it's just, there are probably worse things happening because that's usually how it goes with abuse. The worst stuff is always the stuff most hidden. But either way, it's just the fact that he went through that and is now in this back and forth where his mother just betrays him over and over and over and over again because she doesn't like it that he likes his grandma more than her. And that's literally what it is. She's mad that her mom is a better mom to him than she is. And it's like, that's not his fault. That's your fault. But that's very obviously what's going on here. And I can't even like put into words how just straight up evil it is to take a child that is in like the TMZ put out a story about when Barb called 911 to help him, which was the right thing to do in that situation. When a child is reacting like that, that is the right thing to do. But the reason why they were like, oh, he had a gun and all these like wild things that ended up not being true is because this is like the thing that to me, I was like, this proves that this show should never exist. That people who are reporting on it should stop talking about it and act like they don't know who these people are, even though they're never going to do that, because there are people now that like make a living off of talking about this TV show. And so they're not going to do that. They should though, because the way that he found out that his mom got back together with this man that at least tried to strangle him to death when he was like 14 was by social media. He saw on his phone that by like one of the gossip websites reporting it. And that's how he found out that his mom was back with this person. That is like the worst way on the planet to find out about things like this. Like when I don't talk about this too much because it's like a long part of my family's history that is like complicated to explain. And so I usually just don't even try. But part of it, after my parents got divorced when I was 12, my dad moved back in with us for short amount of times, every like couple years or so. Basically, because my mom was desperate for help with money, and he's a scary person. You don't want to tell him no, honestly. And he just kept doing that because he, like abusive people are, he knew that he could, if he like said he would move in and help her pay bills, he knew that he could do that and terrorize us for a little while, and then she would kick him out again, and it was just like this cycle that would happen. But when the first time he moved back in with us again, when I was also 14, my mom had to come and like tell me. And like she told me when my sister wasn't home because she knew I would be really upset, obviously, because by this point, my sister was still seeing my dad, but I wasn't. And she didn't make me go see him or anything like that. And so she told me about it, and I definitely freaked out. Like, she told me when my sister wasn't home so that I could freak out like that when my sister wasn't there. Because I would have tried to, like, hold it in if she was home and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I definitely freaked out for a while, like, screamed at her and ran in the bathroom and pretended to take a shower so that she wouldn't come bursting into the bathroom and make me leave because I just didn't know what to do and was just upset with her until she got me to leave the bathroom, basically. But, like, that was awful, and that was a terrible thing to have happen and everything, but at least in my circumstance, my mom, like, sat down and told me what was going on and had to, like, sit there and explain it to me. And so I heard from, at least just from her, what was happening. I can't imagine finding out something like that from, like, just, like, looking at your phone and finding out that your mom got back together with the guy that did that to you. And so the reason why TMZ was saying that he had a gun was because he started yelling, like, I'm going to, shoot myself. And I'm like, well, yeah, because that's what you want to do. Like, if you read on the internet that your mom willingly got back together with somebody who did that to you, do you think your life means anything at all?
Yeah.
That's why I think, like, none of the people talking about the show understand how serious this is. And just for this one child's trauma, to not even talking about any of the other kids, just what is going on with Jace is so bad that this show should never should have done this, because so much of everything that's happening with him is happening because of Janelle wanting people to like her. And it's like, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And the thing is, like, I don't care about what happened when she was a child. I don't, in the same way that I don't care about what happened to my dad when he was a child. It doesn't matter. You are torturing your child because he doesn't like you. You're a bad parent, and you're blaming your child for not liking you because you're a bad parent, instead of you realizing that you need to become a better parent. You're blaming your children for not liking you.
And she, like, doesn't understand why he was freaking out. And she calls me saying, oh, he's being bad and everything. And then I'm like, well, I got my hands tied. What do you want me to do? I'm not there. I'm not there to discipline him.
But that's very much like the abuser way of looking at this stuff. And it's literally like torture for me to watch this situation of, like, the idea of him going into a facility like that, which was the right decision when he was saying things like that. Having time away would be a good thing for him in that moment, to try to figure out how to, like, deal with something like that amount of, like, pain all at one time. But the idea that she won't let him talk to Barb, who he actually wants to talk to, and won't let him, and then, like, is moving him to a completely new facility and is, like, making him see her when he obviously doesn't want to see her. Like, there's a lot of confidentiality things in mental health facilities to start. Like, when I went to one, I was in an outpatient program, but it's the only thing I didn't do there was sleep there. So it's very similar to, like, when you stay inpatient, honestly, but you have to put, like, your cell phone in, like, a locker. And there's, like, certain times in the day where you have breaks and stuff where you can look at your phone, but most of the time you don't have it because of confidentiality. They don't want people to, like, take pictures or video people that are in there, because you're supposed to be able to say and do whatever when you're there for help without being worried that anyone outside of, like, this place will find out what you're doing. But, like, when I went to mine, if somebody was not there for the day, we didn't know why. Like, we didn't know if they were, like, hurt, if they were just, like, dropping out without saying anything, or if they were, like, sick. And they couldn't, like, legally tell us anything.
Yeah.
There were people that we thought were scared that were, like, never coming back, and then they came back after, like, 2 days, and they were like, yeah, I just had the flu or something. But they just legally couldn't tell us stuff like that, and so it would be even more confidential with children. And so there are things that he could have tried, if he could, to try to talk to Barb and things like that. But it's just, when you're in a facility like that, you're so vulnerable, and you're just, like, when you're suicidal, like, one of the things people don't like to know, I guess, if they've never felt like that before, is that suicidal people want to live. We just don't think that the pain that we're feeling will ever get any better. And so when you're in a facility like that, you want to imagine that your life will be like worth living one day, but you don't believe it at all. And so it's like it's a battle to do literally anything at all. Like, imagine trying to do anything in your life if that's what you're thinking all the time and that's what you feel about yourself. Like, everything is a struggle. And so the stuff that helps you get through doing that stuff to like build yourself back up again is having people like that. The few people that you do have that you can talk to. And she's cutting off the biggest supports he has to be spiteful, to get back at him. He's a 16-year-old child. Your boyfriend tried to kill him. Like, your boyfriend tried to kill him, and you're cutting him off from the supports that he wants because it's not you. Like, that is honestly completely evil. It's evil to take him out of a facility and make him go somewhere else and purposely be like taking him away from the only people that made him feel understood or safe or okay for the rest of his life. Like, where is she taking him?
Hi, so this is editing, Shannon. So something that Mandy and I remembered that after we recorded this is Colin Goesslin, that is on the screen right now. If anyone doesn't remember his story, he was one of the kids in John and Kate Plus 8, and he was sent away to a military school. His mom said that he had special needs, which meant essentially that she labeled him as a kid that had personality disorders and things like that in order to justify sending him to a school like that, which actually what that actually meant was that she was abusing him and he didn't want to deal with that abuse, that she was laying on his feet. And his dad he literally had to like smuggle letters that he wrote with like friends that got out of the place he was at that said like, please help me. Like, it'll come up on the screen if it hasn't already, asking for help, for his dad to even find out where he was, because at the time his dad didn't have custody. The court thought that he had cheated on his mom, and people liked his mom, and so it became like this whole big thing where he had to like fight to get Colin out of this military academy place that he never deserved to go. And Mandy and I forgot about it because after this happened, Colin has taken himself off the internet and has a private life the way that he wanted. And so it occurred to us that this could be the idea of where Janelle wants to take him, which would be absolutely beyond horrific. But we wanted to add this in as another example of another kid that was harmed this way. In this case, he was severely harmed, but at least he was able to get away from the parent that was doing it at a certain point.
But like, people talk about these people, like these kids especially, as if they have a right to know what's going on with them. Yes. You don't have a right to know a single fucking thing. Like, nothing. Absolutely nothing. I hope Jace just disappears. I hope that Barb gets custody back from him, and that when he is 18, and he is fully an adult. But even honestly, if Barb just got custody of him, I hope that he just takes himself completely offline and nobody ever hears from him again, and no one has any idea what's going on with him. Like, your curiosity does not matter more than him being like a functioning alive person. And the people talk about him as if him and like the other kids that are on Teen Mom, like they have like a right to know what's going on with them. You don't. And it's part of the whole reality TV like system that people think that they do. Like, they talk about all these people like you have to tell us what's going on with your life now. You can't like suddenly just disappear on us. And like, he was a child. He was literally inside his mom's stomach when he was on reality TV for the first time. He was in there since he was an embryo. Like, he had nothing. He had like, his everything, every single aspect of his life has been exploited by a reality TV system. he's never had a chance to have any part of his life private. And so, like, you don't get to know these things about these people. Even if you wonder if they're okay, like what we were trying to say earlier, like, I would always wonder if he was all right, because I just care about kids like that, and I know how hard it is for them to get help. It's not easy. Like, I've been in therapy for 8 years. It takes a long time, and the things he's been through is even more compounded because I purposely disappeared from the internet. Hardly anyone ever saw anything that I said anyway. But in 2019, when I was super suicidal, I deleted a lot of accounts that I made, and I barely posted online. And I went back since then and deleted a lot of stuff that I did post during that time because I just don't want to see it, because it just reminds me of how horrible I felt then. And like, you don't want to be seen when you're when you're struggling so hard. You just want to disappear because nobody likes people seeing you when you're struggling that much. And so the idea that, like, all of these strangers are, like, watching everything he does, it just puts so much pressure on him, because it's just like, he knows that everything that he does, people are going to report on it. Like, he knew when he was wanting to die that, like, it was going to be reported by people, that they would find out. And it just makes everything so much harder. Like, how are you supposed to get better and actually be able to, like, sustain that when the internet is constantly reporting on your every single move in your life when you're 16?
I mean, like, and even watching it from afar to wish him well feels like being complicit in it in this case, because, like, there's no reason that I should know what the 911 call between Barb and the officers when that whole thing happened. Like, one of the places that I get some of this information from is the Ashley Reality Roundup. Like, when something happens, I'll check there. They didn't put a lot of the stuff with the fact that he was saying he was going to actively shoot himself, because they wanted to preserve some of his privacy. But even then, like, I don't know. We didn't need to know every time this kid ran away. We didn't need to know every time something was happening. And it's becoming this self-fulfilling weird thing of Janelle wants to be better. She wants to show everybody she's this great, good mom and stuff. And so she does more things that end up looking questionable. And, I mean, clearly she was going through stuff herself when she was a teenager, if she was even in that situation. But at this point, we've watched her go through it for, like, over a decade and a half. So, you know,
It doesn't
people
matter
have been
anymore.
trying. Yeah.
It just doesn't. Like, the tweet that you showed me the other day when she said something about how, oh, I'll always do the right thing to protect my children, except for when your boyfriend is trying to strangle one of them to death, right? Besides
Yeah,
that,
then I'm gonna deny he ever did it.
no, that's not about protecting your children. It's about spiting your mother. And that's like why it doesn't matter anymore. That's why I say, like, it doesn't matter what would have happened with her mom, because what she's putting Jace and what she's probably putting her other kids through that we don't even know about is supersedes anything that her mom could have possibly ever done to her, because it's way more complicated and a way bigger scale, and they're just being put through way more. And she's, crossed the line long ago of somebody that is, a victim of an abusive dynamic with this person, but is also much more taking part in the dynamic, and is like is like an active role in it, and is like not is protecting him over protecting her kids, and is also just lying about things and gaslighting people on TV and doing all the things like that. Is taking an active role where you're an active participant, and you're not just like a victim of that relationship, and not pretending like she isn't still in some way. But there's a line that you cross, and like just to use like my mom as an example, when my parents, she divorced my dad because she saw that my sister and I were terrified of him. And she didn't even know everything that was going on with me, but she saw enough to know. And so that she started divorcing him when I was 11, and he lost his goddamn mind for a while on her and did like really scary things, but she still did that. Like, even if she let him live with us because we were poor and she could never afford to live anywhere, and he never gave her money for like child support stuff. And so she was working all the time trying to afford just like life. Even if she gave in with that stuff, she never got back together with him ever. That was like never something in her mind. She despised him still. And that's why he would live with us for a couple months and then move back out again. And she was the only one that he had a relationship with because his family cut him out. And so she felt like she couldn't, that was just her own thing. Like, she felt like she couldn't completely cut him out either, because then he would have absolutely no one at all. And that's true. Like, if my mom didn't take him in when he got dementia stuff happening, he would have just been like a homeless person with dementia. And like, now I think that would be fine. At the time I would have been upset about that. But like, that's the truth of that situation, that my mom did not like contribute in that way at all. In the way that Janelle is. She didn't like get back at me for anything, or at my sister for things like that, or anything like that. That's not what was going on in the way that Janelle is doing this. And I get so scared whenever people post anything about him, because I'm just like, you don't understand, you wouldn't be posting this if you understood like how precarious of a situation people are in when they feel like that. It's like when I talk about like my dad and stuff, this is like the stuff of why I'm so like definitive about certain like abusive characters that remind me of him and stuff, is because people like that, they don't want you to be your own person. And like, your mom was like that in a different sort of way, but it's the same thing. They don't want you to have the choice to be your own person. They don't want you to make your own decisions. They want you to just be a toy that they can mess with whenever they want to. They want you to be who they want you to be. And if you ever show that you're your own person and that you're not someone that will just do whatever they want, they punish you for it. And that's what she's doing to this child. She just keeps punishing him because he just doesn't want to live with somebody who tried to kill him.
Even there was a clip that came out very recently, because I think they tried putting her on Teen Mom again. She's officially been off the show, for anyone who doesn't know this, since David's abuse, like, the mask slipped on camera. They pretty quickly were like, we don't want to film with him anymore. And then she stopped filming. And she's tried off and on to get back on camera. For whatever reason, when he was put into her custody, she was on camera again briefly, and there's a scene that was shot of him saying, like, I know you tried your best, all of that. This kid has been wanting her acceptance for a long time. And so, yeah, it might look like maybe he really does love her, and you know, like, maybe she is somewhat of a mom that he wants, but it's only because that's the mom he's given, you know? Like, we all start there in our trauma therapy of like, they may not have been perfect, they may have done all of this stuff, but like, that's my mom, you know? And this kid is going to take so long for him to fully come to grips with even the parts of his trauma that he didn't know existed and wouldn't know exist unless he like saw a TV show, because he gets to see his mom nodding off with like an ex-boyfriend. He gets to hear about abortions and then her getting pregnant right away afterwards with Kaiser. Like, things that he just shouldn't know, you know? Like,
and honestly, the stuff that you were saying from the beginning, like her just leaving him with her mom and acting like her mom should just do that. The other person I've heard in like the public eye that's done things like that is Casey Anthony. And it's the same, it's the trait that is that they're treating their child not like their own person, but like an extension of them. And that's like why parents abuse their kids, or why people abuse kids, but especially parents abuse their kids, is because they don't really see you as like your own person. They see you as like an extension of them. And so for her, like, she's like, well, I want to go out and party. I'm not going to like stop doing things that I enjoy just because I have a baby. So you just have to go watch her so that I can do what I want. And so she's not willing to like do anything to make her kids happy because she doesn't actually see them as their own people. They're just a reflection of her. And that's why these like super abusive things happen. That's why people like this do this sort of stuff. And it just shows, that's why when you note it, when you see that like pattern, then when you hear them say stuff like that or make those decisions, it's very easy to figure out what kind of person they are. Because I know that sometimes she says, because you've told me that she says things like, oh, people will know what really happened one day. And it's like, at this point, it doesn't matter. Like, it like, even if Barb was like this monstrous person that Jace like didn't realize was, you know, someone who was abusive to or something, it doesn't matter because he wants to be with her. And so even if you had bad experiences with her, or even if you think that he is being like manipulated or whatever by her, if you let him make his own decisions and figure things out, he would figure it out much faster if that was actually what was going on than what's going on right now where you're not even letting him make the decision. If you actually trust your children to make their own decisions in their own life, they will figure it out. Like, my mom let me decide if I wanted to see my dad or not when I was a teenager. And when I said I didn't want to see him, she never made me go see him at any point when I didn't want to. And like, she didn't make me go to his house. She let me be the one to decide. Like, it was always up to me and my sister what we wanted to do. She always like if we wanted to see him, she didn't want to be the one stopping us from seeing him if we wanted to. But she wasn't like forcing it down our throats. We always had the option to decide what we wanted to do the entire time that he was around. She didn't like force us to in this sort of a way. And so it's like, even if she was this horrible person that no one knows about yet, like, it doesn't matter because Jace wants to be with her and he should be allowed to do that and figure things out on his own instead of her like manipulating his entire life to do whatever. Like, you're not actually protecting your child if that's the lengths you go to in order to do it. That's just control. And I don't know, it's just, this situation is so scary. And I don't know why. I just want Jace to get to be 18 and I want him to sue everybody from MTV for doing this to him. And this should never have happened to him. I want him to live that long, but I also just want him to be able to get something out of this because it's going to be so hard it's already hard enough to separate yourself from your abusive parent anyway, but it's going to be even harder when there's all these strangers on the internet that are going to have opinions about that for some reason and are going to judge him about certain things. Like, we all saw how easy it was for people to turn on Taylor, Frankie, Paul. When like 2 weeks ago, I saw people making videos about how much they hated Dakota. And suddenly like that one video comes out and they like all flip on her. Like, Janelle could put out any varying amounts of things that could make him look bad and have people turn against him in the same way. Like, I don't trust that anybody wouldn't fall for that because they fall for it every single time.
She's going to. I already know she's going to. I know she's going to be like, look at my kid who has all of these behavioral problems. And I will, for one, be the person like, we watched you gaslight him about pulling a gun on somebody during a fucking like road rage incident on MTV, lady. Like, of course your son has issues.
Yeah, and it's also a thing of like the idea of her even bringing that stuff up right away. If you're just even willing to do that, you're done. Like, if you're willing to like go to other people and be like, look how messed up my child is. Anyway, can I have custody of them? Like, that's not how that's gonna work. It's just not. And God. And just overall, all these stories all happening pretty much all at the same time. It just feels like I just am afraid now about some other situation happening from some other reality show that I don't even know exists right now.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of them out there, and I try not to pay attention to any of reality TV. To me, feels like this factory of trauma becoming worse over time, and it just doesn't feel necessary, I guess, or good. I don't know what it could bring to people that would make it worth what happens to the people that are on it.
Yeah, this era needs to be over because at best, it's a bunch of people acting, right? At best, reality TV is a bunch of people trying to play a role so they get the most screen time. At worst, you're putting trauma hard on display. My final thought is honestly, the only reality TV shows I can stomach watching at this point are like Alone, which is one where people literally go off into the wilderness by themselves by choice.
Oh yeah,
To go
my mom watches that one.
Yeah, like because there's nothing unethical when the person is making the choice. They know they're facing the elements by themselves and all of that, right? So that one's fine. But every single dating show concept that they come out with, every reality TV show concept, it's at best going to be one season of genuine acting or not acting, genuine, reality television, and then the rest is going to be drama and nonsense to keep the views up. And there's no way to sustain that at all. So it's done. I feel like that era of television needs to be over.
Yeah, please. It would be really, really nice.